So by now, some of you may or may not have noticed that I'm going to war with MAGA. It is not a coincidence that you see some of my videos lately have been quite aggressive against MAGA. And that is because, yes, I am going to war with MAGA. And here's why. MAGA, as I've said many times in my videos, represents a very juvenile cult. A lot of these men in their 30s, 40s, and 50s, I look at their behavior and their actions, and it's not unlike that of 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds. Look at the leader. I always talk about Donald Trump acting like a 13-year-old girl. I don't say that to insult him. I say that factually, the things that he does, this is how a teenage girl behaves. Very, very sensitive, very insecure. I mean, look at how much wealth he has and power, and yet he still feels a need to sort of go back and forth with random people on Twitter. He's posting rants at like 3 a.m. in the morning. I mean, just very, very soft and sensitive, very, very emotional. The way that he's doing things is in a very, very sort of abrupt manner. It's I mean, you look at all the liberal tears rhetoric. I mean, this is straight out of high school, right? A lot of these boys, like Matt Gaetz, like Tim Pool, like Steven Crowder, this guy putting his penis on his coworkers, dressing up like a woman, and all this nonsense. Matt Walsh, all these boys, they they act like kids. They act like children, right? It's all about owning the libs and ooh, the liberals are crying. This is, if you remember in high school, where you had these bullies that would pick on other kids, and they got enjoyment from seeing them crying, right? So it's like, you go and you throw some paint on some nerdy kid, and then you see him walking around, and he's like, "Why you guys keep messing with me?" And then it's a funny thing. They're just sitting there laughing, look at it, he looks so funny, man. Look at his whole thing is all painted up, right? But these are grown men, right? A lot of MAGA. I mean, you look at what happened on January 6th. These are boys. They went there dressed up in their costumes, like as if they go into some kind of war. They get all this military stuff on. And then what did they do? All this talk and guns and stopping tyranny. And they claimed they thought that the presidency was being taken. And that's it. That's what, come with their little flags. I mean, it was bad what they did to those police officers. But overall, I mean, you come dressed for war. You're talking about 1776 or whatever. And that's your revolution? That's what you came up with? Right? I mean, it was childish. It was embarrassing, and I've called this stuff out previously, and it should be called out. What's changed now is the stakes have gotten very, very high. This is the way I look at it. I've tried to be understanding. I try to realize that we're not all the same. We don't all have the same maturity level. We don't all have the same intelligence level. Some people have some stunted growth for whatever reason, emotionally. And I generally believe people should be treated with respect, right? Just because somebody has some level of disability doesn't mean that you're to treat them as less than, right? So I think the analogy that I use is, imagine a young 5-year-old is at a party. There's a house party, right? And he takes a bowl of punch, right? And he's running around, he's giggling, he's running around, and he's spilling, Kool-Aid all over the place. And he might have actually messed up some people's outfits, and they might have spent some good money. So that's not good. I mean, that's a little bit more than just an inconvenience, right? I mean, there's costs associated, right? But we're not gonna we're not gonna get aggressive, really aggressive, and like yell at the kid, like really do it, and like we're gonna go throw him against the wall or something. You're on punishment for a month or something like that. It's a 5-year-old, right? We understand that the kid doesn't know any better. Now, I'm not saying that a little kid, a 5-year-old, gets to do whatever they want. Obviously, there needs to be rules and there should be punishment and things like that appropriate to the age. But we we allow for a lot of we allow for a lot of grace, right? Because we understand that this kid is not old enough to understand the implications of their actions, right? However, if that kid, instead of running around with a bowl of punch, is running around with a loaded gun and pointing it at people, bang, bang, you're dead, bang, bang, that changes things massively. You get to a point where your sort of grace that you're giving to the child, the risk or the danger that the child poses supersedes that grace greatly. Now, at this point, you need to be very, very aggressive because this kid is playing around with a gun. Someone can die. Now, obviously, it's still a kid. I'm not saying you're going to go punch the kid in the face or something like that, but you're going to be a little bit more aggressive, right? Like someone may jump at the kid, like a football type of move, knowing that they could possibly injure the kid, but they take the chance because it's kind of they're weighing the risk of someone getting shot, versus the kid potentially getting injured. So they do their best not to really injure the kid, but they're gonna get super aggressive. Now you're not gonna jump at a kid like that and throw him to the ground, type of thing, like a linebacker type thing. You're not gonna do that just for like Kool-Aid, right? So previously, I like to look at things like MAGA was just running around with Kool-Aid and, no pun intended why I use Kool-Aid, but whatever. Realizing that it's not just all trivial. Like, hey, somebody's wearing $1,000 outfit or something, and you just stained it. That's not good. And now if I'm the parent, I got to pay for that. So it's not that it's all trivial, but it's kind of like, it's just a kid, right? But MAGA is at this point running around with a loaded weapon. So I have to, as an American, prioritize the safety of my other fellow Americans in the country over, giving grace to MAGA, understanding their limitations, understanding that these people have some kind of stunted growth. All these people, they all seem to be from the same. I mean, we have all types of people, all types of abilities, and we have all types of people with sort of limitations in their thought process, their cognitive abilities. But there's being understanding, and then there's being irresponsible. I think it's irresponsible to continue to treat MAGA like they're just children running around with Kool-Aid when they're actually running around with loaded weapons, and in some cases, literally. At this point, we need to treat MAGA appropriately based on the real threats that they pose to this country. The other way I look at it is for the people who are still in this MAGA movement, who are adults, 30, 40 years old, 50 years old, they're adults, right? You're adults. I can't just, even though I'm identifying on the same point, I'm identifying that they act like children, but they're not children. They're actually adults. And at some point in time, I need to start actually treating them like adults, even though they're acting like children. Which is, listen, man. I mean, because I thought about, some people are just ignorant. They don't know any better, right? They're watching this propaganda media. Listen, man. As adults, part of being an adult is you need to be responsible, take responsibility for your actions. You need to, you know, be able to take care of yourself. So, for example, educating yourself on the way government works, educating yourself on politics, thinking for yourself and not allowing people to just manipulate you. People like Tim Pool with their stupid videos. I'm sorry, man. You guys in MAGA, you're adults, right? You should know better. And I can't just put it on the media you're listening to, because unless you have some kind of severe mental illness as opposed to just being a little bit immature, it's just, imagine you see some adults that are driving around drunk and then they get into an accident and they kill a whole family. And then it's kind of like, they didn't mean to do it, right? But, and we all make mistakes. But the thing is, as an adult, you should be old enough and mature enough to know the risks of drinking, how it affects your judgment, and how the ability for you to be like knowing when you've had too much to drink is going to be compromised by the fact that you're drinking, right? The more you drink, the less your judgment gets. Like, these are things that adults, like children, they don't get it. They don't think about the consequences of their actions, right? Adults, you should know better. So if you go and you drink and get to the point where you're drunk and you go out there and you kill people, you need to be held accountable, right? I can't treat you like a child and just be like, well, it's not their fault. They didn't know, they were under the influence. No, that's the way I look at the thing with MAGA, man. I can't just put it all on, right-wing media, although they're a big part of it. I think as adults, you should be able to have some responsibility and just not be like a child and just sitting there and allowing these people to put this narrative on you, and then you don't question it, you don't challenge it. You question everything coming from liberal media, everything coming from mainstream media. But then Ben Shapiro, Steven Crowder, Tim Pool, they can tell you all kinds of craziness, and you're just sitting there, oh yeah, liberal. Come on, man. I don't want to use the R word. I'm sorry. I can't allow that, man. I can't just act like you guys are children. You're adults. You're acting like children, but you're not children. You need to be held accountable for your actions. You need to be held accountable for being irresponsible as adults, as Americans. And I can't be as bad as you guys by being irresponsible, by sitting there, well, they don't know any better, and it's the right wing media. No, man. I, as an adult myself, need to recognize that you're doing serious damage to our country. The actions that you're taking, the maniac that you're supporting, is doing severe damage to this country. They're gutting our government, which to a child seems like great. We have too much bloat in the government. But as adults, you guys should be responsible enough to know that even if you want to gut the government in terms of it's bloated, you got to do it in a responsible way. You just start all willy-nilly firing people. At some point in time, you're going to fire the wrong person. You're going to fire someone who's an expert with, like right now, they fired two nuclear expert guys, and now they don't even know where they are. Do you know how many times we've had almost accidentally launching nuclear missiles? A lot of people don't know this, right? There have been more than a few times where we had accidents where they almost launched these missiles. What happens when you mess with that? It's already had issues. Now you start just willy-nilly firing like as a child, like not even thinking about the consequences. And then a nuclear missile really goes off. What happens when a nuclear missile from this country goes off? What's the response going to be? What happens when another country responds to that and a nuclear bomb drops in your town? Right? This is not a game, right? The United States government is not a game. This country is not a toy, right? Serious consequences can happen from the sloppiness, right? You want to cut funding, you want to waste and fraud, You do an audit. You hire auditors. You go through the process. I'm not. You can do it quickly. I'm not. People want to say, "Oh, it's slow." No, you can be quick, right? Elon Musk is so smart. He should know that you can do this. You can do it. You can do it fast. You can be aggressive, right? But you've got to follow some kind of procedure, some kind of protocol. That's how adults behave, right? You don't just go cutting stuff off and firing people willy nilly and hope for the best. We got hundreds of millions of dollars of food sitting rotting on some dock right now because of the childishness coming from this MAGA movement. People are literally dying as a result, and many more are going to die. We're looking at a future terrorist attack. We're looking at a future massive cyber attack. We're looking at a future potential massive data leak where your information ends up somewhere and all of a sudden your grandfather's information gets used and someone, messes up their credit or does some insanity. Maybe they steal your identity and then your parents, have to go and try to defend who they are because somebody else is claiming to be them and who knows what. Right? Who knows what scams? So much things are at risk right now. War. How many people are going to die? Right now, there's bird flu spreading, and Donald Trump's childish thing is like, let's just not talk about it. Let's just pretend like nothing's happening. What happens when one of your family members dies? Think about you have a presidency. You could have a major disease spreading around the country, and you wouldn't even know about it because his thing is like, if you don't know about it, then it's fine. This is not a joke, man. The United States government is not a joke. It's not a toy. This is serious business. So because of that, I've come to a point now where I'm no longer willing to give MAGA any grace. These boys and little girls that are actually grown adults who are caught up in this cult, who are acting like a typical teenager does, super selfish, only thinking about themselves, focused on trolling people and everything's a joke, giggling and all this kind of stuff. You find human suffering to be funny. Ooh, look at the immigrants getting kicked out of the country. Oh, great, go back home, right? Everything's a joke. That's how children are. Everything's a joke. Well, this is not a joke. And we, the adults in this country, whether we are conservative or liberal or progressive, whatever your ideology is, this is not about ideology. It's time that we stand up and we resist and we start expecting better from our fellow Americans. No longer can you hide behind you didn't know, you're just a little immature, maybe you watching, oh, it's the right-wing media. No, man, the stakes are too high for that. Right? America ain't got time for that, man. You guys are slow on the uptake for whatever reason. But you better figure that out real quick because we can't continue to carry your dead weight as you drag the country down. Right? This is serious business. It's not a joke. It's not funny. We're adults, and we need to behave as such. MAGA, this means war. Playtime is over.